Welcome to the latest episode of Now Nerd Out With. I'm your host, Paul, and joining me today, I've got the Green Party candidate for the Tamaki electorate, Don Mackenzie Mayo. Now, Don is a fascinating character because he writes and works with fascinating characters while also having studied medicine and surgery. It's a really interesting dichotomy, running in an electorate that has a very long history with the colour blue and a little bit of flirtation with the colour pink, and keeps popping up weirdly in all the research I come across with really racist people talking about koe marama for some strange reason. So I'm really curious to get your perspective on all of this. But first of all, I kind of need to ask a really random question about your work on Shortland Street. This is probably something you get all the time, but can you name the lyrics? Can you tell me the lyrics to Shortland Street?
Okay, so the confession about Shortland Street is that, I knew about it, but I wasn't even really a massive fan until I got the opportunity to write a couple episodes. So I got there and I had to sort of study up about 20, 30 years of lore in about a week.
Oh, wow.
So no, I cannot sing you the Shortland Street lyrics, which is probably like, I might get my citizenship stripped off me at this point, especially now that I've worked on the show, but...
I don't know that they do that about citizenship these days. It used to be when it first came out in that sort of first decade where it was like super, super popular. It was like a cultural thing because there was nothing else to watch or to do. But I was thinking about this today. The original lyrics actually kind of fit sort of well to politics these days. Is it you or is it me? Lately, I've been lost, it seems. I think a change is what I need if I'm looking for a chance or to dream.
Wow, it really does.
Yeah.
I think maybe that could be the Green Party. Well, we'll get sued by South Pacific Pictures, but yeah, it's potent stuff.
It is. How did you end up writing for Shortland Street?
Well, writing and like screenwriting has been my dream since I was probably 5. I'm not even sure what TV show it was that started it all. As like a infant, it was probably like an addiction to Thomas the Tank Engine or something. And then that just progressed as my age got older to different shows. And then I wanted to do it myself. So I just started writing some little TV show ideas with my best friend. And at one point they were just asking for, opportunities for new trial writers. And I just got the opportunity to come in and do a couple episodes, which was really cool. And work with a really cool team there. But yeah, that was a really fun opportunity because for many people, Shortland Street is the sort of gateway into the rest of the industry for screenwriting in New Zealand. Like you have to work on Shortland Street at least for a couple of weeks, before you can say that you even, write in New Zealand. So after that, I've been able to do some pretty cool things as well. Make my own pilot episode of a TV show that's going to come out here soon. A high school murder mystery. So yeah, it's this allowed me to sort of step into this world which I've been dreaming about since I was a child. Yeah.
All the people I know that have worked on Shortland Street have always described it as a bit of a meat grinder. Like the whole process is just super sped up. It's writing, production, everything. It's a machine to pump out content, and it's like that in a lot of places around the world. From somebody who's sort of just entering the field, how does that feel to be dumped right in the deep end, like right in the middle of this machine that creates something that is really iconic for Kiwis?
Yeah. Well, it's so impressive just to see, like, people always shit on Shortland Street. They're like, oh, the storylines are terrible. It was better last year. It was better 10 years ago. But the fact that they were able to pump out that many episodes a week with like a billion different characters all intertwined in their relationships, and they keep a pretty good track of things that have happened in the past and how they should influence the characters now. Sometimes there's a few omissions I've heard, but it's a pretty inspiring place to work, to be honest, and it really shows you, everyone thinks New Zealand is, well, we have we have our own reputation that we put on ourselves of being a bit scrappy, but we're able to pump out some pretty cool stuff week by week.
For you as a writer, what did you learn in that process?
Oh, Uh, well, I've always been a bit of a perfectionist, and it's definitely not a place where perfection uh, can thrive. Um, as I'm growing up, I'm learning that there's not really any area where perfection really exists. But yeah, it really helped me sort of with the idea of just sometimes you have to go with not your first idea, but your third idea. And it's never going to be perfect, but it's more about getting something done than making it perfect, or else you know, as we see with our politicians, you know, you can talk about what's perfect forever, but it can actually be actually getting some shit done, which is what really matters to people, rather than just talking about what would be ideal.
See, that's one of the bits of feedback I seem to get a lot these days is people going, I don't know who to vote for because they don't give me everything I want. And it's
Yes.
kind of frustrating because I want people to go out and vote. I do understand wanting to get everything you want, but it feels very much like they're choosing to find a reason not to vote because something
Mm.
doesn't fit their perspective perfectly. Um, as a candidate, is that something that you've come across? And as a creative, is that something that you've seen happen in the industry? That perfect being or good being the enemy of perfect, or however that phrase is supposed to go.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, definitely just as I venture into this experience running in Tamaki, um, I find it a lot with people and their relationship with the Greens is that there'll be something that sort of deters them from voting for the Greens, something that puts them off a little bit. And that idea of, you know, not everything having to be perfect really has sort of fueled a lot of my connections with people in terms of, well, here's on all the things that we're agreeing on, like this list of about 10 different things we're agreeing on. And there's these two things that we're not quite agreeing on. But look, 10 things, that's more than two. And coming at sort of bridge building from that perspective has been very useful for sort of showing that, you know, total agreement isn't what we need to progress society. We just need to agree on the majority of things, and especially the intentions behind our actions. The fact that we all really want the same thing, which is obviously, you know, a warm, dry place to live, good income, good work, good food. Those are the things that we can all sort of agree that people need. Um, and then once we're on that plane, let's discuss the strategies how we can actually achieve it. Yeah. And oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things I've always noticed with the Greens, and this year is no different, is that their policy is very data based. Like there's
Mm.
very much, this is the evidence and science behind what we're saying.
Nerdy.
It's not necessarily. It is nerdy, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Having a look into some of their bigger policies around things like housing, for example, there is
Mm.
so much work that's gone into that. It doesn't always translate well to audiences who get sound bites from media, for example. Or one of the other things I've come across a lot this year with talking to Green candidates in particular is that you guys seem to have this weird dichotomy where you're told you're not being environmental enough. So you need to play up on the environmental aspect of being a Green Party member. But then you're doing too much on the environment and you're not talking up things like the education or the business now or anything like that. In terms of what you're doing as a candidate, how do
Mm.
you feel when well, you don't fit the box that I see for a Green candidate?
Yes. I mean, ideally, there's no green candidate which fits the box of what people think is a green candidate because it helps us
Mhm.
broaden our movement even further. You know, hmm, how to put it?
Have you come across that much in Tamaki? Because it is a
Yeah.
very right-leaning electorate generally. The people who
Well,
vote tend to be very
yes. Yeah.
right-leaning because you've
Yeah.
also got areas like, is it Morningside is in Tamaki? Gosh, I'm trying to
No,
remember.
not Morningside,
Glen
Meadowbank.
Meadowbank, that's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
And Glen Eden, they're there,
Glen
and they
Innes.
tend to be Glen Innes. Gosh,
Don't
it's
worry,
been
I
so.
get them
Uh,
confused still.
yeah,
Uh,
and like the work I've done with Auckland Council, where we put
mm.
events on in that area in particular, it
Yes, yeah.
tends to go around Mission Bay because
Yep.
that's where the voters live. And areas like GI don't tend to get a lot of the same offers from local politicians who also tend to lean right because that's who's voting there.
Yeah.
It does feel though like you've got this pocket of leftness hiding within an electorate that currently has been run by the person who took away pay equity for women. Is that something that changes how people perceive you as a Green candidate?
It's interesting. Yeah, everyone is always like, "Oh my God, you're running in the most right-wing electorate in New Zealand." Not true.
No,
Not true
no.
at all. Sure, Brooke Van Velden got elected, but the very unique set of circumstances that led to that. What we have is that even in these front bays, with all these, pretty rich people living there, is actually this huge love of the environment. There's this group called the Eastern Bay Songbirds Project, and basically you go from Orake to Kohimarama, right down to Glendowie, Churchill Park, Dingle Dell Reserve, Kepa Bush, all of these places where there's so many people working to protect their local environments. And often these are people who are quite economically well off. But you can communicate with them on the environment. And, it really is a place where those blue-green voters do kind of exist, more so than I think in other places in New Zealand. So I think in that regard, those are people that we're willing to reach out to. If people want to vote with the environment at the top of their priorities, no matter what their income is, come to the Greens. We're absolutely going to, do everything we can to protect these areas and these birds. But you're right in the sense that it is often the projects in these front bays that receive a lot more support from local council. Whereas, we've got the same level of passion for not just the environment, but other left-wing ideas and values in areas like Glen Innes, sort of the emerging area of St. John's and Stonefields, and of course in Meadowbank as well. That I think definitely gets forgotten about. And you'll see I'm not the only candidate in this race who is trying to, connect to those areas a lot more and make sure that they're equally represented as being part of this Tamaki electorate, not just the front bays. Yeah.
For somebody who lives outside of Auckland, and there is, I'm told, quite a few people who do that, the idea of Tamaki does feel like those front bays, the ones that are out there on the coast. You get that beautiful view of Rangitoto, of the harbour, of all of that kind of stuff. What is your favourite non-front bays part of the electorate?
Does a river count as a bay? Probably yes. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time just around the Glen Innes shops over the last couple of weeks. And there's this community centre, this performing arts centre, which is a really good example of council actually putting some money into an area that sometimes doesn't have money put into it. And it's such an awesome piece of architecture, and they have such amazing events there. They have artists in residence. It's called Te Oro. And it just shows that, as soon as you put a little bit of investment into an area, it just ignites what was already there and just sort of builds upon it. So, I got to say the GI shops.
They have some of the best op shops in the country.
They do have some of the best op shops in the country.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yes. So much so that they've inspired me. I think I'm going to do my own little thrift store as a fundraiser event. I'll be running in strong competition against the Sallys across the road, but maybe some people will pop around to all three of us and pick up some pieces.
Well, see, that's my favourite thing to do in GI is to go for like a tour of the different op shops.
Yeah,
you
the
have
little
so many
thrift crawl. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome fun. From the perspective of somebody who's worked you did some location work, I believe,
Yes, I have.
On a fairly decent movie, The Wrecking Crew?
The Wrecking
with
Crew.
Jason Momoa. The Wrecking Crew. When you take a look, like location work, people think, who aren't in the industry, they think, that's pretty, I'm going to go and film. There's obviously a lot of other things that come into play, like access to resources, access to infrastructure, how easy it is going to be to deal with locals and stuff like that. When you look at the electorate itself that you're in, what do you think is the biggest draw card for filmmakers to a place like that?
Ooh, that's a great question. First of all, I just want to remark on Wrecking Crew, just an example of what we can do with, Auckland communities and that sort of thing. We managed to make 2 streets in Otahu look like Hawaii and crash massive cars into each other, and sort of, was quite disruptive to the local neighborhood, but there was investment as a compensatory investment as a result. Um, but yeah, Auckland is filled with these areas which are very appealing to filmmakers. That's a good question. I think you'd have to go to one of the bushes or the forests. There's this
Hmm.
amazing bird sanctuary out on the coast, just on the Tamaki River, which you could absolutely use the wetlands there as a very good setting for a Doctor Who episode.
Is that the one the
If
train
Peter
goes
Jackson was
past?
ever to direct one here. The train doesn't
I
go
would love.
past there, but yeah, that's more right on the actual coast. But it'd be very
Okay,
good, picturesque setting to have some aliens emerging out of the wetlands, I think. Yeah.
I think that is a brilliant idea. I've always wanted to see Peter Jackson do a Doctor Who episode.
I
Did you
know.
ever see the video that Peter Capaldi did, where he came
Yeah.
over here? He was doing a tour here, and he did a video with Peter, and Peter and his daughter are sitting there reading stuff from Stephen Moffat, just going, "He just wants you to do one." He's like, "How much am I getting paid? Look at me polish all my Oscars. Why should I do Doctor Who?"
I mean,
It's so much fun.
I got to be honest, Peter, you teased us with that. He was going on for years about doing a Doctor Who episode here. I genuinely think there was discussions about it at some point, and the barrier was that he said it had to be filmed here, which was just too much of a
Yes,
nightmare for the
the
BBC to
BBC just
move
didn't have the
their
budget for it.
production. No, but I mean, Doctor Who is like, it was very foundational to my life. It went Thomas the Tank Engine, Doctor Who was the next in that path of yeah.
So
Um,
who was your doctor?
See, I kind of knew you were going to ask this. Well, I started watching when I was about 6. It was just when the reboot started. So that
Okay.
was like Christopher Eccleston was the first Doctor Who I think I ever watched. Although my brother did play me like old videos from Video Easy of the third Doctor, John Pertwee, who had this like
Yep.
amazing like, velvet coat and a yellow car. Um,
Etsy.
so maybe he officially is my first Doctor. I'm not sure. But then, I mean, I got to be honest. I kept watching the show past the point where all my friends stopped watching it, and it was no longer cool to
Mhm.
watch it. So I had to sort of secretly watch it on Sundays, just when no one was looking, and sort of I didn't have anyone to talk about it at school with because everyone would have bullied me. But I would say when I was doing that, I was about 17, and I would say Peter Capaldi was definitely my favorite. He most sort of,
Mhm.
I think, captured the entirety of the energy of what I thought the Doctor was and who the Doctor was. This like so alien but so human, quite cold but also like deeply empathetic, uh, very contradictory individual. Yeah.
Is there, because it's been coming up 70 years, is
Mm.
there a sort of overarching message or story from Doctor Who that you think people should take on board these days?
Yes, yeah. And I think again it was really like prominent in that Stephen Moffat Peter Capaldi era. I think his final words are "be kind." Um,
Hmm.
I think he said it before Jacinda even said it. Maybe. Um, maybe she's a fan. Um, but be kind, but also, you know, use science, use evidence base to make your decisions. Um, listen to voices that sometimes are forgotten about. Um, those are all messages which I think are underlying through all of the show, really, especially the modern era. That I think maybe were very foundational in my life, just in terms of what I've ended up doing and the values I've ended up having, which is weird that a science fiction show can be so formative.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why it's lasted so long, to be honest. Like the
Mm.
messaging in it is universal and
Yeah,
generational.
yeah.
And yeah, it might be a show that is technically made for kids, but it is something that adults enjoy a lot. Have you ever seen any or heard the stories of the lost episodes of Doctor Who?
I have. I am not super deep on the old, pre-reboot stuff, but I know that there were episodes which now there is no taped form of them that aired on TV. People have seen, and now just are in the ether, which is kind of scary.
So there is, they do pop up every now and then because they used to be sent out
Mm,
worldwide on film.
yes.
Paul Scoons, who runs Retrospace in Takapuna and is a
Oh.
massive Doctor Who fan, written about Doctor Who, he actually discovered one of those hidden film reels from a
Oh,
lost
wow.
episode many years ago. So, and he found it here in Auckland. So we
Oh,
do
wow.
have a really nice connection to
Wow.
the whole,
I didn't even
there's
know
this
that.
giant thing. It's when you talk to somebody like Paul, who is really heavily involved in the democratic process as well here,
Oh, yeah.
it's really cool to see just how passionate he is about the things he loves and how they sort of tie together in a way as well. Like it's for
Mm-mm.
me, it's always a big fun thing to see that happen.
Yeah.
When it comes to your writing, is there influences from pop culture that you bring into how you write and create?
Ooh, good question. Well, I do love the sort of sci-fi, speculative fiction, dystopia sort of world of things. Um, it's
Is
very
it more
appealing.
fun when you're not living it though?
No, no. I think that's why dystopia and sci-fi is so like that's why it has lasted so much as a genre because it allows us to make sense of the terrible decisions that our own leaders make. It's a way of sort of, in a way, I guess it's going. Oh, it could be worse. It can always be worse. We can always imagine it
Hmm.
worse. But also, I think it just is a way. It just allows us to take our own lives and reinterpret them in a lens which I think maybe the distance that it provides allows us to understand things in a way that we can't when it's too close to us. So that's very, sorry, metaphorical, conceptual answer,
Oh,
but
that's
I
fine.
think,
That's what
yeah.
this show is about. We want to go a little bit deeper into the pop culture thing, so it's not all just vote for me. Um, which I've been very lucky in that respect so far. The Green Party is actually probably the nerdiest party I've come across, I think, ever. And it
Unfortunately,
doesn't surprise me.
and yeah.
Uh, I don't know. I think the ones that I've dealt with personally, like Lawrence, for example, he is so proud of
Yes,
the things that he's passionate about, and he's so smart and he's so good at
yes.
communicating that sort of stuff. Same with Ricardo Menendez March.
Mm-mm.
So smart, so informed, and
Big
has so
video
much fun with
gamer.
pop culture things. People like Mikhail Mulipola, his comic
Mm-mm.
book background,
Yes.
absolutely brilliant. And he can have a bit of a laugh at himself, knowing full well that he's got people on the right going, well, you're brown and you're running in the greens, so you're a bad person and you said things we don't like.
Yes, and we're going to
You
obsess
don't,
over every single word you've said in the public
yeah,
record and try to turn it into
yeah.
some far more inflammatory statement than it actually was at the time.
It'll end up as a free speech union lip, where they're like free speech for everyone but that person. Um, when it comes to the work that you're doing in politics at the moment, as
Mm-mm.
a Green Party candidate in that kind of environment, does that make you a little bit more hyper aware of the sensitivities that some people have towards the party?
Sensitivities some people have towards the
Yeah,
party. Be
yeah.
more
Well,
specific, Paul.
if you look at somebody like Mikhail, for example,
Mm-mm.
who he got in the Herald. There was a bit of controversy around something he said last year, which, from his perspective, it's all about free speech and having his opinion out there. And from the perspective of the media and those on the right who scream free speech all the time, it was all
Mm.
about he said something he shouldn't have, which seemed kind of ironic to him. But that feeds into some people's opinions of the Greens that they're not necessarily going to be putting the best candidates forward. I know that it's a fairly common comment that I get on my YouTube content that gets blocked fairly regularly, where some people like to play up what they consider a violent aspect of the Green Party. Having met
Mm.
a number of Greens, I can't say I've met anybody violent in the Greens, but
No.
it does feel like there are some groups further on the right, like fairly far right, who like to vilify the Green Party as this big, scary, violent, massive people who want the environment to be good and us all not to die horrible deaths at the hands of machines. So do you find that kind of attitude that some people on the far right bring in has impacted what you're doing as a candidate?
Hmm. I mean, we definitely, I think. there's a lot of people in my life who wouldn't usually vote Green and who I am helping to try demystify the Greens to them. Because I think for a lot
Hmm.
of people, it's the Greens are mystified or they're over there and they're not seen as real people and normal people to a large majority of New Zealanders. Um, Whereas when, these people get to meet any of our candidates in person, they like them because they're
Yeah.
nice, pleasant people with good ideas and, thoughtful about our country and where it should go. Um, so trying to do a lot of that demystification is definitely a part of this campaign, especially in somewhere like Tamaki where there is thought to be an aversion towards hyper left
Hmm.
politics and policies and that sort of thing. So saying like, hey, under this policy, under the Greens wealth tax and, tax changes, you'd actually be getting a tax cut. That is one of those lines which to so many people just doesn't align with anything they think about the Greens. They think
Hmm.
there's no way that myself as someone who's earning $80,000 a year would get a tax cut under this party. Surely they just want to raise income tax on me. So just doing that basic demystification, which really is just clearly explaining our policies,
Hmm.
is a very key part of the campaign for sure. And as you were saying earlier, a lot of the policy is comprehensive and evidence based, which does make it averse to being turned into sound bites. But finding ways where we can both retain the evidence, the data, but convert it into a very digestible format for the majority of voters is definitely something that I think not just myself but the entire party is focusing on this year because we know that that's how we grow and that's how we get
Hmm.
people to vote Green who haven't voted Green before, which is how we get Green ministers in our next government, which is how we, change the world.
That sounds like a good knock-on effect. As somebody who is trained in medicine, doctors often have the same kind of hurdle in that you're dealing with something incredibly complicated,
Mm,
oftentimes, that you have to explain to people in a way that they understand. People
yes.
who are scared often.
Mm,
I'm like, my father actually went in for minor surgery yesterday, and he hates hospitals, hates them.
mm,
He has this morbid fear that he's going to die in one. And
mm.
so, knowing that he had to go in short notice for exploratory surgery on his throat freaked him out. But he had a good doctor who sat down and explained everything to him in really simple terms that he could understand, knowing what he was going through. Does that kind of skill set, as somebody who is trained up in that field, translate well to what you're doing now in politics?
I bloody hope so. No.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I hope it does. Yeah, I think I think it absolutely does. Something that really annoyed me in medical school was the pomp and the over ceremony of a lot of it. Often, and you do need your own language in order to communicate with each other as medical professionals. But often, I think things were not over intellectualized, but over. We just had too many words for things that we already have words for. So trying to bring things back to just much more simple, basic concepts where possible was something that I tried to do within my you know, study and that sort of thing. And when I started to interact with patients and that sort of thing, definitely something I was trying to bring to my work. And yeah, it definitely does translate into policy and politics as well. Um, it's so inaccessible for the majority of people, politics. And that's just because, well, it's actually because a lot of people with a lot of power want it to be inaccessible, and
Hmm.
there is a little overlap with medicine there too. Um, it feels good to have something which is yours and can't be attained by everyone else. And that applies for both politics and medicine there. Um, so yeah, doing what we can to make it accessible to normal people is like probably the key mission of left wing politicians as a whole, because it's that group of people that don't feel like politics is accessible who we need to vote for things which will make their lives better.
Now,
Yeah, and it really
speaking of
does.
making things better.
Mm-mm.
Well, so speaking of making things better, one of the things that you have on your IMDb credit list is a sustainability role. And,
Yes.
and I'm kind of curious, how does that make a film set better and
Mm-mm.
make the environment better? Because obviously film is a massive thing for our economy. It is, if I remember correctly, the creative industries here is one of our, I think it's our third largest GDP earner. It makes as much money as forestry does. Obviously, we've got big names, like Weta Workshops doing their thing down in Wellington and Peter Jackson doing his thing.
Mm-hmm.
But sustainability is not something that people often consider when it comes to our screen industry.
No.
What does that role actually entail, and how does it make things
Mm-mm.
better?
Yeah. Well, it's a very new role. It came about as a result of the changes the last government made to the tax rebates that international productions get when they come here. And it was basically said, if you want this extra 5% rebate, you basically need to achieve this set of sustainability principles. And one of them is hiring a sustainability coordinator manager to come in and sort of advocate for sustainability on the set. And it's a variety of things. You're just trying to reduce the waste and emissions of a project which sadly has a lot of waste and emissions associated with it. Like to make a film, you're running generators all the time, you're driving people around in petrol vehicles all the time, you're making props out of specialized materials and impossible to recycle epoxies. Um, yeah, it can be quite wasteful. You're building sets out of, just tons and tons and tons of wood. Um, but luckily, now that this has happened, and basically because of the government action, the government actually pushing this, we now have lots of innovation in the area to try reduce that waste and emissions. So
Those,
I can get into
was
the
going to
really
say,
boring technicals about it, but yeah, there's a lot to do with bins, which is not really
I
the
can
most sexy
imagine.
stuff. Yeah.
I can imagine. But is this something that acts now as a bit more of a draw card to international productions, knowing that there's always competition out there? There's
Yes.
always like even the neighbors across the ditch, like you should come film with us. The president of America is all, I'm going to put 100% tariffs on
Yes, we're going to
productions
do
that
it
go
all in
overseas.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, you could totally remake Lord of the Rings in the California hills. But if you're looking at bringing international production here, how does something like sustainability play into that decision making process?
Well, I'm not sure you're going to like the answer.
That's
I
fine.
don't know if it does.
Okay.
In the sense that this is happening all over the world, luckily. There is drives all across the world to incorporate sustainability into filmmaking. Luckily, it's not a New Zealand specific thing. We're seeing it in the UK, we're actually seeing it in America a little bit. We're seeing it in Australia, and that's really good because it means that no matter where these productions go, they don't have an option when it comes to being sustainable. It becomes just standard practice, which is what we need in order for
Mhm.
every industry, not just the film industry, to reduce their footprint and the emissions that we're putting into our atmosphere. So um, I don't know if it necessarily is a draw card specifically to New Zealand, but it does very much align with why people do come to New Zealand in terms of a lot of the time our natural environments and filming in them. So it does, I think, work synergistically with some of these companies and these production companies' reasons for coming to New Zealand for sure. But again, it wouldn't have happened unless there were politicians who cared about it and made it happen. It's one of those areas where you can't actually leave companies to innovate on their own completely unchecked, because when you do that, sadly, the only thing that often guides decisions is profit. And it's really when these companies are working in tandem with responsible governments that the best outcomes actually sort of arise. Yeah.
So, if this is something that's an industry standard that we're seeing rolled out in all kinds of places, would
Mm.
it be a backward step then for, say, our government to go, you know what, screw sustainability with this kind of project?
Yeah, so I mean, David Seymour's had issues with the whole rebates process, not just including sustainability. I don't quite
Oh, he just
understand
doesn't.
why, because he doesn't like handouts, even when they go to big business, which I thought he was a big fan of.
No, I think they have to go directly to people he gets money from.
Oh,
Other than
true,
that,
true.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Because obviously, even bloody John Key was really supportive of rebates. Maybe potentially too supportive, depending on what you think about the Hobbit law and what it did to the film industry. But yeah, so I think David went, oh, I've got some power now. Let's see if we can get rid of some of these changes. So, another one of those things which the previous government passed, and they're really just trying to undo anything that the previous two governments, the last Green Labour New Zealand First and then the majority Labour government did, whether that be smoke-free, fees-free, sustainability in films. They're trying to erase the entire legacy, anything progressive, anything positive that the previous governments have done. And I think this just falls into that catchment as well. So yeah, they pushed MB to review whether sustainability should be a requirement or a consideration to get this extra uplift. And that review's currently still happening. I really hope that they, see that there is a lot of value in keeping it. What we do see is that when these films do go to market, having sustainability credentials does matter. And it also matters to our own workforce in New Zealand. We're so used to these sustainability procedures now and protocols that I think the New Zealand film crews would be incredibly upset if they were removed as well. So we'll see what decision they make. But of course, any decision that they do make will take time to come into effect. So if the government changes in November, whether it be sustainability in the uplift or fees free, there's opportunities for these things, these repeals to be reversed yet again.
David has a history, and the ACT Party has a history of being very upset with Pacifica artists in particular. Is there a possibility that this drive is also because, Jason Momoa is Pacifica, Cliff Curtis is Pacifica, they've just bought a studio in Auckland, and he wants to tell them that they're bad because they're Pacifica and doing something creative?
I would go further and say that David Seymour is probably quite anti-art, really. There's a lot of people that don't see art as being of value to our world because it's not clearly associated all the time with economic profit. And it really speaks to a wider flaw in his worldview, I think, which is that not everything can be defined in dollars. And value can't always be defined in dollars. Culture is really what keeps societies running for generations upon generations. GDP is important, but it comes and goes. But culture is something that you build upon with time, and it sticks around and it defines a society in the long run. So, don't think it's specifically targeted at Jason, although, I don't know, it's a good theory.
I mean, I would love to see Jason and David face off against each other. That would be amazing.
Yes, that would be genuinely I would be so keen to cast David in a movie if he vowed to stay doing pictures for the rest of his life and stayed out of politics.
Yeah,
we could have a whole franchise.
David is an actor.
And Jason,
he has an acting credit.
He has an acting credit?
Yeah, he played young Edmund Hillary in a biopic.
What?
Did you not know that?
No, this is crazy to me. Because, there's
David,
a big Edmund Hillary...
is always
There's a big Edmund Hillary movie coming out next year. I think Tom Hiddleston's playing Edmund Hillary.
Oh, definitely not going to have David in that one. But David has always maintained that Sir Ed Hillary is the greatest ever New Zealander. And I'm not going to argue that because I could see the argument for it.
Yeah.
And Ed Hillary was always somebody who was very open to the public and helping people out. I think if I remember correctly, when he was still alive, he still had his phone number listed in the phone book publicly, so kids could ring him up and ask him about climbing Everest. And I think that is a really cool thing.
That is
But there was a biopic that was done, it must be about 25 years ago now, and David played young Ed Hillary in that. So he does have some acting experience.
Oh my God, I so want to know how that happened. How did he get?
I don't know.
Do you think he applied, or was it just one of those like friend of a friend? His parents knew the filmmakers. We need a young child.
I actually don't know. I will look into that and find
He
out.
is very good at changing his accent, though.
Yes, that's very
He can
true.
do
He has a
accent
passable
work.
Canadian accent.
He does have a
Very
very good
passable.
Canadian accent.
Yes, it's like he's tried it out all over the Atlas.
Nice.
I'm going to run a test past you. You up for doing something called the Kobayashi Maru?
I don't think I understood those syllables, Paul.
Okay, so the Kobayashi Maru is something that's in Star Trek lore. It is an impossible test. Nobody can succeed at the test. In Star Trek, it is designed to teach people that they can do everything right and still fail. This is a question set that is going to ask you some very hard questions that are going to piss some people off because there is no right answer for everybody.
That sounds so fun.
Okay, all right. I've got my clipboard here.
I'm sorry to the Star Trek fans. I've never watched a single episode.
I've
seen that Black Mirror parody of Star Trek.
That's a really good parody.
That was awesome.
That was really
but
good. Galaxy Quest is also another really good one.
Yeah,
Galaxy Quest is a great parody.
I really need to.
It is a really good film.
Yeah, okay.
But that's right. These aren't all Star Trek questions, but it's just named after the Star Trek test. But there are a couple of trick questions in there, so you might have to take a pass on those ones. So first one, Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Oh, Star Wars. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. It's just bigger. And to be honest, never been a big Star Wars fan, but Andor, one of the best TV series ever made. So I'm going to say it just for Andor. Just for Andor season 2 even.
Yeah, that's so good.
The whole Gorman storyline. So good.
Yeah. Marvel or DC?
I got sucked into the whole MCU thing when it was really big. I was just so into that whole Avengers stuff. Midnight screenings for Infinity War and Endgame. Whereas, the DC EU just never really took off. I love the James Gunn stuff, but I'm going to say Marvel.
Okay. Kirk versus Picard.
So these are one of them. One's Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
No.
And the other
and the other one's got the pointy ears.
No, the other's William Shatner.
William Shatner. Well, I really like his cover of Common People. Have you heard that?
Okay. I have, yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to go for William Shatner.
Okay. Why didn't the Hobbit just fly on the eagles to Mordor?
I'm going to say that, as a writer myself, it's much more important to get really cool journeys over really amazing terrains than it is to do the most logical thing. And if they did that, there would be no movie, no books. So that's why. It's more fun.
Plot armor. Yeah,
it's not even plot armor. It's just...
Well, it's armor to create a plot.
I guess it is a type of plot armor, yeah.
All right. Who shot first, Han or Greedo?
Oh. Have you seen that, how George Lucas goes in and he does those, all the changes to the thing, to the original cuts, and he just added him saying, McClunky, for some reason.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to say McClunky shot first.
Okay, that could work. Do Balrogs have wings?
Uh-oh. You're going to have to remind me again what a Balrog is.
Big, fiery monster in the pits of Moria. You shall not pass.
Yes, you shall not pass. Do they have wings?
Yeah.
Sorry, catch me up on this debate.
So, in the book, there is one line that says a Balrog has wings, but there is no other description of them having wings anywhere in any of the other books. So, it
Yeah.
becomes a big question of do they have wings, or was that one line like something that was left in by accident? Peter Jackson, I think, had wings on his, but I
Yes.
don't believe they have wings in the latest series version that's been done, the Rings of
Well, that
Power, because the
Amazon
Balrog's
Prime
only been seen
series
briefly.
was just no.
Yeah.
That throw that away. Um, yeah, if it's in the book, it's true. Any
Okay.
word that gets put into something should be treated as canon for the rest of the project's life, I believe. Much to the
Forever.
torment of both the creators and the fans.
That is very fair. PC or console?
Ooh, I'm not a big gamer. Um, I have recently busted out my Nintendo Switch and started playing, of all things, something which I never thought I would sink so low to, Fortnite.
Oh, okay.
It's it's quite addictive. It's quite evil too. It's sort of like the final endpoint of capitalism in a video game. You know, you can buy music, clothes, skins,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna say my Nintendo Switch, not for Fortnite though, more for like Mario Party, Mario Kart, those sorts of games. The group games I think are the best ones. And
Okay.
you can't really do those on a PC unless you're doing like Jackbox or that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Sub or dub?
Oh, again, anime is like what have I watched? Maybe like one anime in my life. I've watched Cowboy Bebop, but that's about it. But I did watch that as the sub because I was told I have to. And I feel like that was the right way to do it. I really enjoyed it, so absolutely sub.
Okay. Sequel, prequel, or new series?
Ooh, well, it is always good to be making new stuff. You know, it's so sort of disappointing that we live in this world now where like basically all the movies coming out are just reboots of something that was made 20 years earlier. Just this reheat, refry cycle that we're stuck in. So I do love original projects. Um, and the thing about a prequel is, and I'm probably people are going to disagree on this, but like you already know what happens at the end. It really does take a lot of the dramatic tension out of it. But I mean, a sequel can be done well. Paddington 2, for example, much better
It
than
is an
Paddington
all-time
1.
classic.
Yeah. Toy Story 2, Empire Strikes Back. I'm weirdly going to say sequel after all of this.
Okay. Good choice. What is one piece of pop culture you think people should see that highlights the way the world could be better?
Mm. See, I'm always going to say Doctor Who. Um, I think that, yeah, it's all about the ways we could potentially make the world better. Um, I will push Doctor Who on people no matter what opportunity, no matter, yeah, any opportunity I get.
Okay. What's your starter Pokemon?
I don't really know about Pokemon. The starter ones are. See, I've been around a lot of nerds and just absorbed their knowledge, but never gone deep on a lot of these things. But I like Bulbasaur. He's a starter Pokemon, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's green.
Yes.
He
Good
likes
choice.
plants.
Yes, he does. Very much so. I'm thinking of a doctor between 1 and 15. Which one is it?
You're thinking of the very shortly lived Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor from the TV movie.
No. If you could name the most impactful piece of pop culture New Zealand has produced outside of Lord of the Rings, what do you think it is and why?
Boy, why? I think it showed um, a version of Aotearoa that the rest of the world hadn't seen. Well, yeah, no, I don't think so. Not in that sort of very positive format. You know, with the challenges that a lot of people in this country face, but with a very positive overall ultimate message. Yeah.
If you could find one fictional character that would vote for your party, who is it?
Ooh, who would vote Green? I think Leslie Knope would vote Green from Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Um, you know, people would think maybe she's more of a centrist leftist, but I think she'll read the policies very carefully and see that the evidence base really shows that they're the best for the nation and for parks,
True.
national and
Very
local.
true. And finally, have you checked your enrolment details are up to date, and do you know how to do that?
Vote.nz. I need to change mine because I'm about to move. So I need to make sure that I do it before October 25th, Labor Day, or else I won't be able to vote in the upcoming election on November 7th, which would be a disaster. I'd be losing my democratic rights. And, then I wouldn't be able to complain about whoever the next government is because I wouldn't have taken my time to have a say.
Perfect. Don, thank you so much for this today. It has been a huge pleasure. I've learned a lot. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Paul. It's been such a pleasure to meet you as well. I'm a very big fan.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Have you actually done much work directly with Jason Momoa?
I have maybe said hello to him twice in my life and probably received a hey back both times.
Yeah. See, I've met Jason once, and it was at an event where I was working media down in Hamilton. He was there for an Armageddon event just after he'd finished filming Game of Thrones. And so it hadn't come out yet, but he bulked up big for that one, and he was drinking the whole night. So very drunk Jason Momoa, where his handlers, for some reason, they'd take alcohol off him, they'd turn around and he suddenly had another jug in his hand, which he was drinking directly. Unbelievable how much he was able to pack away. And the most surreal thing I think when I met him and shook his hand, I walked away afterwards just going, holy fuck, Jesus Christ, this hurt. But then actually seeing, the surrealist thing is Lance Henriksen, who played Bishop in the Aliens films. He ducked outside for a quick smoke. He walks in, and you just hear Jason Momoa from across the bar go, Bishop, in that huge, that booming voice, then run up to him and give him this giant bear hug. And you just see Lance Henriksen sort of sitting there going, it's the surrealist thing I've ever been through. It was absolutely brilliant.
Funny. I find it so funny when really buff movie stars are massive nerds. The other one I think of is Henry Cavill. And just we're all just little nerds on the inside.
Exactly. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. While you're here, why not hit that like button or share the video or even subscribe to the channel. You could even become a paid YouTube member so you can see things released in advance, you get access to some exclusive content, and like all these awesome people, you get to have your name at the end of the credits as well.